I keep saying that I'm going to read more historical fiction books because I always really enjoy them whenever I do read them, but because of their nature, they tend to be slower paced for me, so I'm slower to pick it up. I was so grateful that for the last round of the Bookkeepers Community Traveling Bookkeepers group that I am in, one of our members picked out a Lisa C. book, and I have thoroughly enjoyed. I've read 2 books by Lisa C. before, The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane, and I think it's like The Island of Sea Women. I may be getting that title wrong, but I'll put the cover up here. But I loved both of those tremendously. And so we read Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. And this is set in 15th century China. And we follow a female that is from a noble family. And that's important because classism is an integral part of this book. And the women of this period, they spend their whole lives in the inner circles of like a compound, so to speak. And you live with your family until you are of marrying age, and then you are married off to, once you are married off, you get moved to your husband's family. And who runs kind of the social dynamics and the politics is going to be the mother-in-law or whoever's married to the head male of household at that time. This was so interesting because not only do you live, say, with your mother-in-law, but also any concubines that the husbands take, any aunties, any children, they all live within this inner circle. And there is clear hierarchies of privileges and respect and things that are to be done and not to be done and so forth. But it was just fascinating to see how layered all of the relationships were. And then you had their female servants as well that would serve them. So this was a family of means. And so that was the prominent experience that you got. But like I said, you also, because they all live there amongst the concubines and the servants as well, you do see the extra layers of classism and how it plays into this world. But set in 15th century China, this book was equally horrifying to me in the sense that I could not fathom what it would be like to be a woman in that time period and at that location. And it covers things that you may or may not be familiar with in Chinese culture of this time, which was foot binding of the women, which is breaking of the feet and binding them to keep them as small as possible, and just the things that the women endured to be desirable. And this is based off of a real person, but it's fictionalized events. And the real person it's based off was a female doctor. And during this time period, most doctors were males. There weren't really female doctors. And it was very improper for male doctors to treat women. And so much so to where if a male doctor did need to treat a woman, they would put up a barrier between so that he could not see her. And then there would be a designated go-between person that would go and talk to the woman that was ill and then go tell the symptoms to the doctor, and then he would try to treat in this way, but it was improper for him to see her or to touch her. And even more so, doctors, it was considered dirty or beneath them to interact with blood. So women often did not get medical care that they needed. And our main character, her grandmother is a female doctor and her grandfather is a doctor as well. And so her grandmother ends up teaching her, kind of like her apprentice, of how to be a doctor for women, to treat women so that they can, because as a woman herself, she can interact with them and see their complexion and see their symptoms and talk to them in a way that is considered proper. But then there's also the element of midwives, and midwives in this time period were more so what I think of doctors today. They are the ones that actually will deal with bloody situations, even though they are considered less than in the social hierarchy, so to speak. And so midwives are the ones who actually assist with the birthing of children and any of that they're the ones that catch the child, so to speak. So we follow our main character and you follow her from the time she is young, living with her mother in their family's inner circle, and she goes to her grandparents for a short period, and then she gets married off. And so you follow her over the course of her life, which Lisa C. tends to do in her historical fiction books, which makes it just beautiful. And you really feel like you are immersed in the world and immersed in the culture and just get to experience all of it. So this book does focus a lot on, the role of the women in this period is to, have heirs and to have children. And so you focus a lot on the childbirth element of this society, and then the foot binding and just the role of women and the interconnections they have through everything. But this book was wonderful. I gave it a 4.5-star rating, and I really enjoyed it. As I said, I was horrified, but also captivated, and just could not look away, and was fascinated to learn more about how these women lived during this time period. So if you're looking for a feministic historical fiction novel written by a phenomenal author, I definitely recommend Lady Tan's Circle of Women.